Hello and welcome to the Business Post podcast with me, Danny McConnell.
And me, Peter O'Dwyer.
Now, we have had in the 9 weeks, I think this is episode 9, Peter, but in the 9 weeks that we've done this, we've had already a very interesting range of people, but I was really interested and keen for us to get to sit down with our guest this week, Lorna Conn, who is the Chief Executive of CPL, as well as people when I became editor of the Business Post was sort of put on my radar very early as someone to kind of reach out to and meet, because I mean she's obviously had a very stellar career and was kind of catapulted into senior management from a very young age, which she got into in the interview. But she's someone who has sort of, I won't say quietly kind of risen to the top, but has certainly done it in a way that's most impressive. I think she comes across in the interview as a very engaging personality. I think you get the sense that she's very driven, she's very career minded, and not in a negative way. And not, no, I think you guys addressed this in the interview as well. It's not in an aggressive way at all. But what was your impression of her going into it, and did she confound or did she dispel any of those expectations?
Yeah, so I thought she was really fascinating. I think like her career arc has been quite remarkable. She's precocious right from as we get into such an early age, which you'll hear, listeners will hear in the interview, such an early age. She knew pretty much exactly what she wanted to be, who she wanted to be, not just her career, but like how her life would look in her early teens, which was kind of remarkable. It was remarkable in the first instance to have that plan. It's even more remarkable for that plan to have come to fruition and even more successful than she would have envisaged at the time.
Yeah.
Like Lorna was a CFO at 27, which I didn't realize until I was reading up in advance of it. So,
and not of a small company, of a company with a
no,
very hefty revenues. Like,
yeah. So, I think you said quietly, and I think I would agree with that. Like Lorna is certainly well known in business circles, but I don't think she'd be one of the most high profile CEOs that we have in the country. Yet her
she
career
will,
today
she
has
will after this
been.
podcast, obviously. Like,
Yeah, well, absolutely, yeah. It's to chart topping and all the rest of
well,
it,
indeed.
or somewhere in the vicinity of chart topping anyway.
Yeah.
Um, but yeah, I just think it's her career has been so fascinating. I learned a lot in the research for it, and then being able to delve into it in a little more detail and get
Yeah.
her kind of her nuances on it was really interesting during the interview.
We know, obviously, given what we write on every week, what CPL is. But for those who may not be au fait with what CPL is, what is CPL and what does the company do?
So I do ask her this question in the interview, and I'm sure my version of the answer won't quite do it justice, but it is essentially a recruitment firm. It solves problems for individual firms. So it places individuals or whole teams of people into other companies, whether that be to do project work, whether to be, kind of on a temporary basis to fill a gap. And it works across, I think, like pretty much every sector that there is in the Irish economy. It
Right.
has blue chip clients, it has smaller clients, it has middle sized clients. It is one of the biggest employers itself in the country. It's colossal. Certainly one of the biggest private employers. So I think Lorna and CPL both kind of mirror each other in that very successful, but a little bit under the radar. CPL is
Mm.
no, but I don't think it's again one of the most high profile companies that there is out there.
And Lorna follows on and took over the reins from another almost giant or titan of Irish business in Anne Herity. But yet it struck me from the interview, she's not daunted by that in any way.
No, not at all. And I mean, there was she does say that she didn't ever actually see herself as a CEO. She had her career mapped out, like we said, but she never thought about the CEO role. And it was only when I think Anne kind of took her under her wing a little bit and showed her that she very much could be the CEO and could replace her at the helm at CPL. And then she started to very quickly believe. She kind of saw that she had a lot of the base ingredients to do this job. She had the little transition period of a couple of years with Anne still in the business. And then she took it on and she has taken the business on since taking up that role as well.
Yeah, and she also, I suppose, I thought was really interesting, and listeners will hear this throughout the interview, is just her approach to not only her work, but her kind of marrying that sort of balance of, being a very successful career woman and leader but then also managing the responsibilities, being a mother and a wife and all that kind of stuff about having, and she's very, I thought one of the most compelling parts of the interview is that when she gets into sort of, that managing the kind of home versus, and being able to switch off and go on holidays and all that kind of stuff. Because I think, and sometimes you need the subject to be open to answer it, but I thought your question was good in terms of how you went about it. But I also thought she was really up for being open with her answers in terms of, how she manages to balance that about, the danger of burnout, the danger of, kind of almost, being on all the time. And I suppose as a chief executive, there is an element of you can never really fully switch off. But I think, she does see the merit of being able to kind of step out and kind of have a bit of downtime, which I all thought was very interesting.
Yeah, I mean, like I think everybody who has a professional job and is trying to balance home life and professional life has this constant battle and constant juggling act that has to go on. But as we get into, I do think it's right to say that, like, more often than not, it disproportionately probably falls on the woman in the relationship to take up more of that slack. And so we get into a good conversation about why that is. Will it always be that way going forward? What has to happen both at individual, organizational and societal level to make sure that that isn't the case? And Lorna speaks very frankly in the interview about it, and I think has really good insight. So again, as people would hear in the interview, she's not just chief executive at CPL, she's also the head of the 30% Club, which is an organization that tries to address these matters and tries to get better gender balance in business. So she's coming at it both from her own personal perspective, but also the kind of broader industry sectoral perspective as well.
Well, very good. Well, listen, we'll leave it there. Now is Peter's interview with Lorna Conn of CPL. I hope you enjoy, and we'll be back for the post-match analysis in a little bit.
Lorna Conn, Chief Executive at CPL Resources and Chair of the 30% Club. Welcome to the Business Post podcast.
Thanks, Peter. Delighted to be here.
Thanks for coming in. So I was reading about you at the precocious age of 12, knowing that you wanted to be an accountant. Tell me how you knew that at such an early age.
Yeah, I think I was a very academic, studious child, and I had been really into singing and musicals, but very pragmatic, I suppose, and didn't think that would be as safe a career path for me as maybe accountancy might be. Mm-hmm. Always very numerically minded. And it was just a career that I fixated on at that age. And I kind of set myself the target and never steered off course. And really enjoyed accountancy at school, to be fair. So, I am quite numerically literate. So, yeah.
So obviously you had certain traits as a child. You were studious, you were good with numbers. Yeah. Was there something about your environment that kind of shaped you into having that foresight as well of what you wanted to do and be as an adult?
Yeah, I mean, we grew up one of 4 children in a single income household. And there was a big kind of support in place around education, and I've often felt that education is one of life's great levelers. So I was really very academically minded. I think I was particularly good at maths at the time, and then did accountancy as I went through the secondary school cycle. But just always wanted to be able to have that financial independence as I grew up. I didn't want to live from month to month. I wanted the safety and the security of a reasonably well-paid job and a job that paid bills. Mm-hmm. I think that was just something that I was fixated on as a child, really kind of drove me and motivated me as I went through the secondary school.
You're obviously a big advocate of accountancy, and I've read before that you've said you would encourage anybody to take it on as a career path. Does that remain true in this modern world with AI coming? I mean, it's one of the industries that's identified as being most at risk potentially from the advance of AI.
I still think it's a very solid profession. I think new people coming into their working careers need to have a greater emphasis on AI and digital fluency. They need to really embrace their human skills. And I still think that there is a world where numerical literacy is going to be a fundamental part of doing business. It's just that the new world order will be one where your human qualities and your technological capabilities are ones that are going to just be more present.
Mm-hmm. Going back again to you as a young teenager, I also read in a different interview that you had written a letter to yourself. I think it was a part of a school project in first year that was then presented to you again in sixth year. And the life you laid out for yourself was good career, couple of kids, pick them up, drop them off. A very, again, steady. Is there almost there's so many opportunities for young people now. That would sound like a nightmare even to, again, somebody in their mid-20s, some people. Like, have we gone too far the other way of looking down on what is a good, steady life with, a nice job, financial security? Do you think the paradigm has moved a little bit too far away from it these days?
Yeah, I mean, I think fundamentally most people want to create families, okay? Fundamentally, they want to have children. And I think most people want to live in a world where there is equal opportunity. And, as Ireland progresses and grows, and the requirement for a fully functioning talent ecosystem gets ever more important, I think tapping into that female pipeline and female workforce becomes even more critical. And kind of the unfortunate thing, I suppose, is that over the generations, the structural barriers that exist for women more so than men continue to persist. So I don't think people have shifted away from their fundamental desire to have a family and, live that part of their life. But I think women want more in terms of equity and parity around career progression.
So as we said, you're also chair of the 30% Club. So since we're on the topic, we may as well move to that. So, I mean, where do you think the greatest responsibility, if that's the word, lies here? Is it at individual level, organizational level, or is it bigger again that it's at like state level and societal level? Like, where do you think the greatest improvement can be made?
So I think it's threefold and pretty equally distributed. I think, first of all, equality starts at home. So I think families need to get their households in order, and the distribution of caring responsibilities needs to be a responsibility that's equally shared and burdened by the family. Then at an organisational level, I think that there is real opportunities for organisations to help level the playing field for men and women, to promote more flexible work-life practices that accommodate the seasons, let's say, of an employee's career progression. And that's not just for women, it's for men also. And it's really critical that these types of, I won't even say accommodations, it's more like flexible infrastructure, that those types of things are equally promoted for men and women, because flexibility should not be the sole preserve for women. It should be an equally shared reality. Yeah. And then, of course, on a governmental kind of policy level, I think more can be done around caring supports. So childcare and assisted living, home care supports. I think more support could be done there at a governmental level to help ease the burden of care that often disproportionately falls on the shoulders of women. So I think we've made great strides in the past couple of decades, but there's a deeply rooted societal kind of reality where caring rests more so on the shoulders of women. So I think as a society and as an ecosystem of companies, and then as a government, we need to do more to redistribute that burden.
Yeah, I mean, I agree with you completely on that, especially at the societal level. Does that mean that, I mean, we can agree perhaps that the burden should be more equally shared between men and women, the caring responsibilities? But some would say that maybe is unlikely to shift fundamentally in any sort of short period of time of even a couple of decades. And if that doesn't change, does it really put a very hard stop on how much progress can be made, no matter what is done at organizational level? No matter how flexible businesses themselves are, no matter how good they are at, promoting and creating a pipeline and creating pathways for women, will there be a hard stop unless we crack the societal element of it?
Yeah, I mean, I think the societal element will be cracked eventually. I just think it's going to take time. And I think at a societal level, to your point, it absolutely needs to be cracked, or else we will reach to a hard stop. But I think, the more women in leadership positions that can be seen by the younger generations kind of coming behind us, the more reality we bring to the conversation, that it's a real possibility to have both, to have a fulfilling career and to have children. I mean, I had 3 children. But I have been incredibly career-minded all through my life. So I think almost for a woman at a senior level, you nearly need to be exceptionally driven to have the career and have the children, whereas it's a lower bar for men. And that's not in any way meant to be a criticism of men, not at all. It's just a lived reality within the societal kind of environment that I suppose we've all been brought through.
Yeah, no, it strikes me as just a statement of fact, really. But the other societal element that kind of strikes me and stands out to me is that the way, and so many benefits have arisen from our economic growth over the last number of decades, but it has become a society where, for the most part, certainly a lot of families or households are now required to be dual income. Whereas before it was single income. And if you could get by with a single income in a lot of circumstances, then at least it would raise the possibility of men stepping out of the workforce or women stepping out of the workforce. But because both are often required to work now, there's little to no leeway in a household situation often.
Absolutely, and the cost of living is increasing as we know, and it's been well documented over the past number of days. The cost of labour for organisations and the cost of running companies becoming more expensive. So there's a burden, I suppose, on everybody from a financial perspective, and there are much fewer households that actually have the financial capability to stand on one income.
Yeah.
And to your point, that's kind of the reality of society as we see today, which, kind of supports my call, I suppose, for more action around caring supports and what's accessible, available, and what can be affordable, I suppose, for families around the caring burden.
So if we focus then on what maybe can be done more immediately at business level, at organizational level, what's good practice? What should businesses be doing to promote a better pipeline of female leaders and future female leaders?
Yeah, so I think they really need to holistically look internally at every rung of the ladder within their organisation and look at the shape of the profile of the gender mix and try to determine from their perspective, what is it that is structurally holding women back? Why are women not progressing at the same rate as men? Assuming that might be the case through every rung of that ladder. So they need to understand what's the root cause here. Then I think standard stuff like promoting real flexibility across the organisation, but really promoting it as a shared flexibility for all right across the workforce, where it makes sense, of course. And I think the 9 to 5 kind of standard working day and 5-day working week, really its origins came from a time when there was a single income household. So, how do two people work 9 to 5 and get children to school? Like, none of that makes sense in this kind of new era of working. So we just have to be much braver, I think, in terms of how we organise our workforces, even just from something quite basic as a starting time and an ending time. So promoting flexibility for all is very helpful. And then just internal structures in terms of recruitment processes, pipeline planning, succession planning, really monitoring the trends, setting internal targets and holding individual teams and divisions to account. I think all of that creates ultimate progress over time to promote equal gender representation.
And how do we best deal with, again, the burden of just having children, leaving aside the caring element, falls disproportionately on women, obviously, as well, because they take longer out of the workforce out of necessity, whether that be 6 or 9 or sometimes 12 months. And that's, sometimes you feel like you go on holidays for 10 days, you come back and the whole world has changed. So the idea of stepping out of a workforce for 6 or 9 months, it's such a huge break in somebody's career. Like, how can we best help women to not have their pathways stunted by that?
Yeah, and I think, if we stand back from it, okay, most people will work 40 years, okay? The average household's probably having 2, maybe 3 children. So you're only really talking about, assuming that the time you take out is just maternity leave, 2 to 3 years across a full 40-year span. Yeah. So, I don't think it needs to be kind of the penalty that sometimes it's portrayed to be. I think if we look at the bigger picture, there's time that we can make that back. Again, I think the flexibility piece is really important, and accommodating, I suppose, those employee seasons where, seasons of your career are going to look different because of your personal circumstances. I think that's the best way in which you can support women back into work post maternity leave. And no woman will thank you for a job that they haven't earned, or a flexibility that they don't deserve, or an accommodation that isn't proportionate. We just want kind of as much support to level the playing field, I suppose, when it comes to career progression for men and women.
Yeah. To step back and go to CPL on a different topic. So, first of all, your own journey there. You joined as CFO in 2017.
Yeah.
Deputy CEO by 2021 and then CEO by 2022.
Yeah.
And I know you said previously you never had envisaged yourself being a CEO anywhere. That's quite a quick progression up the ladder. How did you find that? Were you? I'm sure you were happy to be climbing the ladder like that, but was it uncomfortable in a way because it was such a quick progression right to the top of the organization?
Yeah, so I joined CPL as CFO when we were a listed company in 2017. So loved the company from kind of first contact. So as my time evolved there within the CFO role, it just felt like a really natural progression to move into the CEO role, and it coincided obviously with the succession opportunities. So felt really normal, really natural. Love being a CEO.
Why?
I just think I see more of the organisation. I think it plays more to my strengths. Actually, I think I'm a better CEO than a CFO. So
again, why? Like what strengths are those that it plays to?
Yeah, so I think I'm quite, and of course, all of these skills can be equally applied to a CFO. I love the variety of jumping from kind of commercial into HR into business operations. So obviously, I see the entire organisation end to end. I actually love the accountability. I love the responsibility. I'm a very interpersonal person, so I enjoy the interaction with the leadership team. I love building great things together, so I feel like I'm on a real transformative journey right now with CPL, and in my mind, I can see the end game for us. So that is a very exciting time, I suppose, for me to be part of that type of organisation, and I'm in the right position to be able to oversee all of that. And do you know what? Look, I was 27 when I got my first CFO role. So
big job for
do you know, and like
even
the size of the business at that time was 100. Different business was 100 million revenue. So I feel like I've been operating at a relatively high level from a relatively young age, if that makes sense.
I think that's a modest account of it, but yes. Yeah.
But I think I was so ready to move to the next stage. So whilst I didn't at one point envision being a CEO, actually things change, your capabilities expand. And I think it was very natural that I moved to the next level in my career. And yeah, I love being a CEO.
So, I mean, CPL is a huge business, but just the elevator pitch for those who don't know much about it. And then also you said, I can see the end game. So what is CPL now and what is the end game version of CPL?
CPL employs almost 14,000 people. We're probably the largest private sector employer in Ireland. We're 35 years in organisation. We offer services right across the talent spectrum, from your kind of standard recruitment services across permanent placement, temp and contract, right the way through to programmatic talent solutions, which would be recruitment process outsourcing, managed services, business process outsourcing, project solutions. And then we have a consultancy arm through our strategic talent advisory company, which is CPL's Future of Work Institute. So we're a market leader in Ireland. We cover every service across the entire talent spectrum. We operate in every sector. We're the third largest provider of home care. For instance, we've got big presence in the healthcare sector, and we work with 5,000 clients. At any one point, we have 65% of the entire working population within Ireland in our database. So we have great candidate reach, but we also have great client reach. So you think of any multinational in Ireland, we've either worked with them or we're currently working with them. So we operate deep in that kind of talent ecosystem, and we believe in the power and the value of what we do as an organisation. I'm very proud to be an Indigenous company that has grown, at scale.
What's the competitive landscape like? Because that seems like such a dominant position, 5,000 clients, pretty much every multinational plus however many Indigenous companies. I mean, do you have a lot of direct competitors? Yeah,
we do. I mean, it's direct competitors across different service lines. So your more traditional recruitment, there'd probably be about 1,000 competitors across Ireland, particularly in the perm placement, because you don't need a heavy balance sheet for individual employee placements. And then you've got big global players who we'd come up against in terms of our programmatic solutions. Sometimes we partner in with them. which is a great, like, because we have the local knowledge, but maybe they have a global mandate. So they've won that piece of work globally, but they need somebody on the ground to partner with. So we do that.
So sorry, what is a programmatic solution?
So a programmatic solution might be, it might be like a recruitment process outsourcing project, or we would basically manage the end-to-end recruitment process for an organisation. We might do it for a period of time, or we might do it forever. Or we might have 100 people on a quality line, let's say, with a pharma contract. Those staff will be our staff, but they would sit within the environment of the client. But we would manage the staff from a HR perspective, but we would work with the client clearly in terms of outputs and outcomes around that particular cohort of staff. So,
and does that, I mean, first of all, there's the scale element of just how big your workforce is, how many clients you have. But is it difficult to kind of keep the relationship with the employee clean, in the sense of, like, if an issue arises, they're your employee, but, you know, located with a client company. Talk to me about the process of, like, managing when issues arise. Does it fall predominantly to CPL or to the company that they're placed with?
Yeah, so we would have on-site HR teams. So the staff would work very, very closely with our internal HR teams. And then we have a centralised HR function. So there's plenty of support in that respect. And we would consider our credentials, I suppose, as a large employer exceptionally strong, because we have been in operation for many, many years. I think we're a very fair employer, and we look after our people and we mind our people. And it's, you know, it's the epicenter of our business model, our people. So it works absolutely fine. It's a well proven model.
One of the probably higher profile elements of the work that you provide, or solutions that you provide for clients, is around the moderation that you do for the tech firms. And mate, that's difficult work. You know, trawling through some really troubling stuff at times. Did you have to put specific supports or programs in place to help the employees doing that work?
Yeah, absolutely. And any type of support, be it wellness or HR, any type of support that we put in place around a grouping of staff in whatever client site they're on would be proportionate to the type of work that they do. So for sure, we would absolutely make sure that there's adequate wellness and supports in place to support people no matter what type of work that they're doing.
Is that an area where you see AI doing a lot of the heavy lifting? Because I would think for a lot of people that's, as I said, difficult work to do. I suppose there will always have to be a human element to it. But I would think, you know, as little exposure as you could have people to some of the more extreme versions of what they must be coming up against, like, will AI help there?
Yeah, absolutely, for sure. And, you know, we're deeply grateful that people, and not just our people, but people right across the world, are doing work like that to keep the internet safe for the average user. But AI is absolutely contributing to reducing the level of human interface that's required with respect to screening content. Yeah.
Do you find a greater buy-in from the big tech firms? Like, do some of them care more deeply about that policing of the internet and the ensuring that it's safe than some others, do you find?
Oh, I think it's a shared endeavour, to be honest with you. I wouldn't see any difference from one company to the next. I think it's really important to mind your staff who are frontline, screening content that can sometimes be extraordinarily difficult to do. So, I think it's very much a shared objective. Yeah.
When you mentioned a couple of minutes ago about you can see the end game for CPL, like what do you want to do with the company? What is that sort of end game that you foresee?
Yeah. So, we've been on a kind of, since I came in as CPL, we've had 2 shareholder changes. So, we're founder and CEO led by Anne Herity, who of course needs no introduction. Just immediately prior to me becoming CEO, we were acquired by a large talent solutions organization headquartered in Japan. And then they themselves, 3 years later, were acquired by private equity. So we have, and particularly as we've grown, we've been looking at the organisation in terms of how it has kind of grown over the years. It's been quite kind of fragmented individual brands, et cetera, et cetera. So we've been on quite a structured program of consolidation and centralization, because when you get to a certain point of scale as an organization, you've got to start being able to leverage that capability and that capacity. So that's what we've been doing, and making pretty big investments in our own digital transformation journey, data, pricing excellence, foundational stuff that supports us as an organisation continue to grow, but grow very agilely and kind of scale off the machine per se. So that is what has been my focus for the past number of years. And when I think of the end game, I suppose I think there's going to be many evolutions of CPL. We were ourselves a very traditional staffing recruitment company, and now that portion of the business is kind of less than 20%. So we've already evolved into that kind of programmatic service lines that I mentioned earlier. So my kind of end game is bringing the organisation through the digital transformation that we're currently doing, that we're probably about 18 months through. And then we look at what the next iteration for us is, as we continue to look at, in the context of emerging AI and new technologies that are just moving at a pace that is unprecedented. So, you're constantly, as a market leader, it's incumbent on us to be part of the disruption, if that makes sense, as opposed to being on the sidelines or a bystander. So we're looking at the business model and how we can leverage AI, how we can organise ourselves optimally from an operating model perspective, and how we can continue to support our clients in the very best way that we can.
And does that process, does that have a big headcount impact? You're such a people business. With AI coming, with the consolidation that you described anyway, consolidation often brings a rationalization, and then we've touched on AI a couple of times already. Like, does the future of the CPL in 5 or 10 years' time have a much smaller headcount than it does now?
Well, I think it's more the principle of doing more with less. Okay, so what AI will do, I suppose, will help us automate all of the kind of lower value aspects of our day to day that can now just be taken out, freed up. Freeing up capacity to do higher value tasks, which could be sales, for instance. So what you lose could be replaced with much higher value activities. So we have probably become a leaner organisation, and have been becoming a leaner organisation even over the past 3 years. The world is in a state of chaos at the moment. That geopolitical environment does not create a good trading environment for an industry like ours.
Yeah.
So actually, the disruptor for us around AI, we've been quietly managing our operating model as we've gone through the last 3 years, because we're just waiting for the market conditions rather to become more positive and more optimistic. It's very difficult for organizations to be making big investments or big hiring decisions in a world that is persistently being plagued by war, the threat of tariffs, political instability. None of that dynamic is helpful in an organization, for an organization in an industry that is very people heavy. So, I think we're going to shape together with AI. We're going to shape up very nicely, I think, in terms of what our business model looks like as hopefully some of that global chaos corrects itself over the next 12 to 18 months.
Yeah. Talk to me about the change when different ownership comes in.
Yeah.
Just a cultural change. Even prior to the private equity buyout, it was a Japanese company. That brings its own thing of a kind of Eastern philosophy versus a Western philosophy. Yeah. Now you've got private equity as the ultimate owner. Do you feel quickly in those circumstances, do you feel a sort of cultural change for better or ill?
Yeah, we do. And I will try to manage that cultural impact as much as I can. So the main kind of exposure will be the CEO and the leadership team. Yeah. The day-to-day running of CPL is largely unchanged and has been largely unchanged. So it'll feel more or less the same kind of as it has been prior to those 2 shareholder changes.
Mm-hmm.
But absolutely, it's brought different expectations. It's brought different strategic priorities, of course, because a shareholder will come with a different sense of how they want things to look, and you just have to roll with that. I'm very much, unless I fundamentally disagree with something, if a shareholder wants us to take a particular direction, for me, it's about, okay, how can I step up now and make that happen? That's just my default. We were going to go in a certain direction under our Japanese shareholding. We kind of pivoted a small bit back to the centre, which is Ireland. It's our domestic market under our new shareholder. But all the time doing great things, getting really great support from the shareholder in terms of investment. They're bringing brilliant experience to the table in terms of what great looks like from their perspective, in terms of all of the companies that they've been involved in, and particularly the last kind of 2 years has been a very almost exhilarating time to work within the organisation, because we're doing a lot of big things, a lot of great things within CPL, and that's keeping a lot of us engaged.
Okay. And if there were to be that sort of fundamental issue, and I'm not saying that there has been with your current owners, you would, on the one hand, you're the CEO, that is top of the chain, but you'd have to win an argument in a boardroom where the ownership will have it stacked in their favour. I mean, is it ultimately a battle that can be won, do you think, if a CEO just doesn't like the direction? Is that, in your experience, can you find that you can hold enough sway over a kind of board of directors to actually influence their thinking?
I think fundamentally common sense will always prevail. Okay, and when you're working with good people who have good competence, then it's very unlikely that there's going to be a complete divergence of opinion in terms of big decisions around kind of the future growth of the organisation. But I think there would be a lot of kind of respect, and that the exchanges that we have are very healthy. Whilst challenging, they're healthy. So there is that kind of psychological safety, I suppose, that I always talk about in the context of CPL. But there is that kind of partnership there, even though we know there's a hierarchy in terms of CEO and shareholder. Yeah. There's a partnership there, and that we both want the very best for the organisation. We both want to get great outcomes for CPL. So never had a situation like that. Don't honestly believe I will. But if I did, I think compromise is where you would ultimately land in a situation like that. Somewhere in the middle.
Somewhere in the middle.
Yeah.
Is that, how would you describe your management style? So obviously that would be a managing up situation. Yes. You're usually your top of the food chain, managing down. But I read some comment where you kind of spoke about the idea of soft power being mistaken for weakness. Are you more of a carrot than a stick sort of manager?
Yeah, totally. Now, I can be hard when I need to be, for sure. But my default is to work with people in partnership. I love to give people space so they can feel good autonomy. The spirit and the DNA of CPL is entrepreneurial, so I never want to stifle that.
Yeah.
I'm more a flat organisation than a kind of a hierarchical one. And this is very similar to Anne too. I mean, you won't see me sitting in an ivory tower. I mean, I can be down having the crack with the best of us, the best of the team, and at the same time being really kind of high pressurised, high stake situations where I'm trying to obviously manage up. So I would think my leadership style is probably quite grounded and quite accessible. That's probably the best way I would explain it. I don't think I've ever changed despite, 27-year-old me when I got that first opportunity in as CFO and 46-year-old me as CEO. I don't think I've changed fundamentally. I think I've become a better leader, and I think I'm more capable now. But as a human being, I don't think I've changed.
Yeah. I heard you mention as well the need for a conciliary, as you put it. Just talk to me about that. I mean, on the surface, it makes a whole pile of sense, that you have somebody as your right-hand man or woman that you can bounce things off. But just talk to me about the need or the importance of having that person.
Oh, I understand, yeah. Well, I suppose, a lot of people would ask me, is it lonely at the top, And obviously, sometimes it can be when it comes to a point where a decision rests solely on your shareholders, or on your shoulders, rather. And what you never want to do is be bad at making decision making. Like, you know, you've got to be good at making a decision. The decision itself might not be good, but actually getting to the point of making a decision, I think, is a real key expectation around a CEO. So I would be quite decisive, not quick, but decisive. I make decisions and I move things on and I get stuff done. That really is kind of my modus operandi. But there are times definitely when you need to download. You need to have somebody to vent to, and you can't do that all the time with your leadership team, because you don't want to bring them down.
Yeah.
And you're trying to motivate and encourage them. But I think everybody within my team, and of course within other organisations, has that somebody, be it in the organisation or outside of the organisation, where it's a free and safe space to just download. I think that's really healthy, to be honest with you.
Yeah.
Download and then move on.
Go again.
Yeah, go again.
How do you prepare yourself for the inevitable, really difficult decisions or really difficult encounters that arise in every organisation?
Yeah, and like some of the bigger decisions and difficult conversations relate to people, like having them one-on-one with people. And, you know, I feel like it's a real responsibility for a CEO to have the difficult conversation. So it's just an expectation I put on myself. I mean, I don't like confrontation. I don't like aggression. That is not an environment that I will ever thrive in. So it's not a value that I would espouse. That's not the manner in which I conduct myself. But I think you can impart even the most difficult feedback, decision or piece of information in an empathetic and compassionate way, and do it on a very human in a very human way. So that's how I always try to prepare myself, you know, be human-centric in my thinking about how I deliver this. Imagine how I would feel if I was on the other side of the table. But just having the courage to have the candid conversation. Like, people actually deserve that, for you to look straight in their eyes and just be really honest with them. And I think there's relief sometimes when a difficult conversation that needs to happen actually happens. You're kind of addressing, you know, the elephant in the room, or whatever issue that's going. So,
did you ever have an instance where afterwards you felt, I kind of did that poorly, and that informed how you did it forevermore subsequently? In that sort of a difficult conversation, difficult decision sort of way. I mean,
probably did in my earlier days, and definitely when I was younger, I found everything harder, if that makes sense, particularly if you're working with people who might be a bit older than you or whatever. So you kind of get much, I find anyway, you get more confident the more times you're around the block. So I've probably had 100 difficult conversations now at this stage in my career, but I always just try to bring it back to the human and just be as decent as I possibly can in that situation.
Finally, what do you do to get away from it all?
I love walking, so I do a lot of that. I love trying to get away to the sun, even for like a 4 or 5 day trip.
Needed at the moment. We seem to be back in winter somehow, but yeah.
Drag the 3 kids along with us, just to have a break. I love being able to completely turn off. And, you know, obviously as a CEO, particularly of such a large company, you're kind of never off.
I was just going to say, can you actually turn off?
You're kind of never off. But like, you know, you can be a busy fool too, working all day, every day. So, you know, you've got to protect your space. You've got to protect your peace. And there's times where you just need to turn off the emails and know that if there was an issue or a fire, somebody's going to pick up the phone and ring you. So instead of being a scrolling demon, actually just protect your peace, turn it off, and have a bit of a break. And I encourage my own team to do that as well. Like if they're emailing me when they're on leave, I'd, you know, be saying, get off the emails.
Yeah.
You know, and I think everybody's healthier. I came back from 5 nights in Spain and I felt on top of the world because I had that bit of a break. And just get the energy back.
You'll have lots of people dreaming of the sun now again. So it's a good note to finish on. Listen, thanks a million for coming in. We really appreciate it.
Delighted to be here. Thanks, Peter.
Great. Thank you.
Welcome back, Peter. That was a really good interview. I thought Lorna Conn was excellent in terms of what she came with something to say, and she certainly said it.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, there was 2 main areas I suppose I wanted to hit in the interview. One was on, I suppose, her CPL hat in her career to date and that business, and then the other was on what we discussed in the kind of preamble about her role with the 30% Club and that whole where society has gone, how we balance home and work and all that kind of stuff. And I thought on on both sides, she really had an awful lot to say and was very interesting on it. So yeah, I thought it went well.
Yeah, and really struck by her honesty around, the kind of the long-term impact or potential long-term impact of, women taking that step out to have children, etc. And can it derail a career versus kind of impact on your career negatively? She's saying, over the course of a 40-year career, it's 2-3 years max. You know what I mean? I just thought the way she spoke about that was, I won't say brave is the wrong word, but I just thought it was very honest and very open. And I thought it was very compelling. And you're kind of almost like, I could have listened to another 20 minutes to that. Like, I mean, I genuinely, given she's such a good subject, with some interviews, you can kind of, right, lads, after 20 minutes, you might be struggling a bit. With this one, certainly not. Like,
No, not this podcast, though.
no, of course not. We'll credit Tim, who edits this, for keeping us honest. But she raised some really profound points. And again, but she's clearly trying to do, I think, is start a kind of a broader conversation within business generally about what we need to do to make it more realistic, make it more viable. And even I thought, getting to that point, I think you raised her quite pointedly and quite sharply, which in a good way was, the fact that, a generation ago or 2 generations ago, one salary was enough to raise a family, whereas now it takes two. And how do we, is that a good thing or a bad thing? And I thought that conversation alone was just fascinating. Really, really good.
Yeah, I thought that was because I kind of, when I think about this, I can't really move past that as one of it's almost like the unspoken element of it. That if you could get by with a single income household, you would have so much more flexibility, whether that's the man or the woman steps out for a period, whether that both can do job shares, we both do part-time or whatever. You'd have so much more flexibility to be able to make this work. But when society, and it has brought lots of good things and it helps economic output, it helps the country at large, having both men and women in the workforce far more than would have been the case previously. So there are benefits. But the negative to it is it just leaves very, very little wiggle room for both partners in a household to progress their careers as they would have wanted to. I thought Lorna's point about, maybe not overstating the impact of having to step out of the workforce when you're having kids as the woman, given that it is only whatever 2, 3, maybe 4 years max out of a kind of 40 or 50-year career. I think that does hold true, but I suppose the points that some people would make as well in response to it is it's happening at a time in whatever late 20s to up to 40 where people are climbing the ladder.
Yeah.
That's the time where you are progressing. You're moving up from junior ranks to middle management to all the way up to more senior roles. And I do think like women take a significant hit having to step out of the workforce in that period of time. If it was happening right at the start of your career, probably easier to recover from, if that's the right word. And if it was happening right at the tail end, well, if you already established yourself. So there is that idea of it being right bang in center of the kind of climbing the ladder years.
Yeah, but I thought she was very interesting and very, as you said, like, I mean, she kind of said she never really envisaged herself being a chief executive. I mean, having gone into CFO at a very young age. But I also thought, the conversation around her leadership style, how she deals with her senior team and kind of empowering the team around her. I just thought you could see how people would want to work. I would think you could see how people would want to work with her because in fairness, or you could see how she can be encouraging of people around her by giving them enough sort of space to kind of do their job and not be micromanaging them and kind of allow them to succeed. But yet at the same time, she talked to the various takeovers of the company and about how much of her job is now managing up to those different relationships with stakeholders and investors. I thought it was a really interesting insight to how someone in a chief executive role not only has to manage down, but manage up.
Yeah, and I think it's like that crucial job of distilling because, I mean, the owners of CPL and the prior owners, and if there are future owners, you can be sure they have very lofty ambitions and strict targets every year and stuff that they want to see hit. And so that's obviously coming to Lorna's level. And then Lorna, though, still has the trust, as you've outlined, and the kind of hands-off approach to a certain degree of trusting her team. And I suppose that's the real skill of a CEO in a lot of ways, of making sure that these very lofty, hard to hit targets are hit, but not feeling like it's only I can do this and I must micromanage everybody and get on top of it all. So I think that's one of the main skills of somebody at that level. And it probably takes a leap of faith, but if you surround yourself with good people, as Lorna seems to feel that she has, then you just have to let them at it and be vigilant, I suppose, but let them at it and trust that they are going to deliver on it. And I liked a lot of what I heard about her kind of management style of, I think sometimes people feel like they have to act a little bit harder maybe than they actually are in real life. she was quite open about it. Like, I'm more about the carrot than the stick. I have a sharp side when I need to have it, but I'm
Yeah.
all about trying to coax and encourage the best out of people rather than threaten the best out
Beat
of
them
people,
over
I
the head.
suppose.
Yeah, and I thought even her response to, the sort of having to have difficult one-on-one conversations with people who might be underperforming or like she was really candid there, I thought, about, not being overly comfortable or I think, can't remember what her exact phrase, but it's not her favorite forte. It's not that she goes in and relishes sort of those difficult conversations, but yeah, has to have them at the same time and been able to kind of get on with it, but also saying, they were much more difficult, I suppose, when you've had only a few of them. But now, when you've had maybe 100 or 150 of them throughout your career, not that they become easier, but you're better equipped to kind of cope with them. And you just wonder, is it that candor? Is it that sort of openness that some might see in a senior position as a vulnerability? She's using it very much as a strength or an asset.
Yeah, I think so. And I mean, like, on the having the difficult discussions, I thought that was the interesting part of it, where she wasn't saying, I have now had 10, 15 years of having to have these discussions. I'm kind of used to it. It's okay. They don't bother me too much. She was pretty much saying, these are still hard. They always will be hard, but I just have a playbook of how I go about it. I try to be upfront. I try to be direct and be honest with people. But it wasn't a case of, oh yeah, no, listen, I'm used to that now and it doesn't really bother me, which a lot of people might say it was, yeah, it still kind of bothers me and it's still difficult,
Yeah,
but has to be done.
yeah,
And so here's how I go about it in the best way I can. And like, it's a big corporation, as we just discussed. I'm sure at all levels there's issues arising all the time. And we kind of discussed about what happens if issues arise with a staff member that they have placed in another organization, because that adds a layer of complexity. It's not just in-house, then it's with another organization. So I'm sure there's all sorts of knotty, thorny sorts of issues that have to be
Mm.
ironed out all the time there.
What was your overall assessment then of her agenda, her plans for CPL over the next while, and given the structure that it now finds itself in with its new sort of private equity owners, etc. I mean, how likely is she to succeed, or are we able to say she's on the right track, or what's your overall assessment of her and CPL as of now?
Yeah, I think overall CPL is probably well positioned because it hasn't just bet the house on one or two sectors. Like, certainly in our reporting over years, go back a decade, one of the main areas of focus has been the tech sector, with CPL's involvement there, because I suppose firstly they are big clients. They're the likes of Meta and Twitter back in the day.
Mm.
Some of that work that CPL staff members do, as we got into in the interview, is difficult, hard work. It's moderation. It's seeing stuff on the internet that probably very few people want to see, and they do it so that the rest of us don't have to do it. And that has brought difficulties before. So, tech is certainly one of the more high profile areas that they've been involved in. But their breadth is such that I think invariably the Irish economy and global economy will change. We spoke about the impact of AI. I think that will have an effect on CPL. It'll have an effect on CPL's headcount, I'm sure. So there's lots
Mm.
of changes coming here, but I think the breadth of the sectoral reach that they have and the number of clients, the number of blue chip clients, but also the spread of small, medium, and large clients means that it should be pretty well insulated no matter which way the economy ends up going. It kind of has tentacles in every bit of it. So it'll be about being reactive enough to move more resources here rather than there. But I think it's well set because of its scale at the moment.
Very good. Well, listen, I have to certainly say that Lorna Conn has left me impressed with her performance today and her track record. But Peter, thank you very much. Thank you to the listener for staying with us. That's it from the Business Post podcast for this week. We're back next week with our next guest. And thank you again to everybody who's contributed to allowing us to hit near the top of the charts. We've not quite top of the charts just yet. We're getting closer. But after 9 or 10 weeks, we are delighted with the progress that we're making. And it's clearly we're landing with some form of an audience out there. So to you, for those of us who've come with us, thank you so much. We'll be back next week, next Thursday morning as normal. Until then, bye-bye for now.